Hello, and welcome to The View from Washington with the Hindu. I'm Sriram Lakshman coming to you from Washington, D.C. In this episode, we're going to look at the battle for the White House, which is in full swing between Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic candidate, and her Republican opponent, former U.S. President Donald Trump. We'll look at the closing arguments both candidates have been making over the last few days. We'll also look at Indian American attitude survey, as well as other election-related issues such as early voting and election cases. Stay tuned. So, what's Kamala Harris been up to in the last few days of the campaign? Well, on Tuesday, she held a rally on the Ellipse, which is a 50-plus acre park in Washington, D.C., on the south side of the White House, between the White House and the Lincoln Memorial. That was where Donald Trump delivered a speech on January 6th, 2021, that incited a mob of his supporters to attack the U.S. Capitol.
We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol.
So the location of Kamala Harris's closing argument, she's a prosecutor, so her team was pitching this rally as the closing argument. And she basically said, almost 4 years ago, Trump was standing at this spot. And she's trying to present her case as one of two options for America, two very different futures between under her and under Donald Trump. And she said he is unstable, and she said he's out for unchecked power, seeking unchecked power. And she basically said he's planning to jail dissidents and those who have, and go after people who have a difference of opinion from him, where she is offering those people a seat at the table.
And to people who disagree with me, unlike Donald Trump, I don't believe people who disagree with me are the enemy. He wants to put them in jail. I'll give them a seat at the table.
She's seeking the vote of independents. She's seeking the vote of Republicans. And we had Bob and Christina Lang a few weeks ago. I had talked about them. They opened for her in Bucks County in Pennsylvania. Well, they were here again in Washington, D.C. at the Ellipse a few days ago. Lifetime Republicans who are actually said they were voting for Kamala Harris. So she's been painting these two very different visions of America and telling voters to support her. She's also attacked Trump's economic policies. She said he's going to give tax cut to his super rich friends. And she also called the import taxes a Trump sales tax that was going to increase prices for ordinary Americans. And of course, she's also been talking about how under a Trump presidency, rights of women, reproductive rights, not just abortion rights, but also right to IVF and so forth, would be further restricted. She also talked about her opportunity economy, so how she is planning to have the middle class home care, to care for financial assistance for those who are looking after their parents. She's been focusing on the sandwich generation, as her campaign has called us, those who are taking care of both their children as well as aging relatives, assisting them to look after aging relatives at home. She's also been talking about a child tax credit for new parents, down payment assistance for housing, capping the price of insulin.
So I'll fight for a child tax credit to save them some money, which will also lift American children out of poverty.
It's unclear how some of these policies will work exactly, and we'll have to wait and see if she gets elected to see how her team is going to roll these out. During her speech, Kamala Harris also adopted a tough tone on immigration. Immigration is a weak area for Kamala Harris, and she hasn't had a great track record with the Biden-Harris administration as its borders are. Both Democrats and Republicans want something done about border security, and they want more secure borders and a different approach, a tougher approach to illegal migration. So Kamala Harris said she will swiftly remove those who are present in the country unlawfully, but she also said, working with the U.S. Congress, she will get past comprehensive immigration reforms that would provide a path to citizenship for certain kinds of migrants. Another thing Kamala Harris did during her ellipse rally was to draw a line between the Biden-Harris administration and any future Harris administration. You may recall that a few weeks ago, in an interview with ABC's The View, she had said basically there was no difference between Biden and her on policy issues. Now, after Biden dropped out of the race, one of the lines of attack of the Republicans has been to hold Kamala Harris responsible for the Biden-Harris administration's policies. And when she said this, it was kind of proving their point. So since then, she's been trying to reposition herself. And she basically said in her rally that the Biden administration's focus has been getting out of the pandemic, recovering from it. But now that that had happened, the focus was on cutting costs. So in terms of closing messages, Donald Trump has been focusing on pinning the Democrats to unsecure borders. He's been saying that other countries are emptying out their insane asylums and jails, to use his phrase, into the United States. And last Monday at a rally in Atlanta, he played a video by the mother of 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungai, who was murdered in Texas earlier this year, and 2 undocumented Venezuelan migrants have been held in connection with that murder. And in addition to that, he's also been attacking the radical left machinery, as he calls it. Thirdly, he's also been talking about the economy. He said he's going to cut inflation and that he's also going to protect American manufacturing by levying an import tariff. Democrats have, of course, talked about how the import tariffs will serve as a Trump sales tax. And it's not clear how he's going to cut inflation and how he can do that and have an import tariff. Finally, he has also been encouraging people to vote early. Now, Trump was a critic of early voting in 2020, and he had also associated that with allegations of fraud. However, this year he's been pushing people to vote early. Over 3.1 million people have already cast their ballot in Georgia, and this compares to a total of 5 million ballots or so that were cast in 2020. So a majority of the number from 2020 has already voted this year in Georgia. Finally, on Wednesday, Trump had a rally near Green Bay, Wisconsin, and he drove a garbage truck, and he asked reporters, "How do you like my garbage truck?"
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
Now, Trump has obviously been on reality TV. He enjoys showmanship, and he actually arrived at this rally wearing a sanitation worker's vest. And basically, a few days earlier, there'd been a rally at Madison Square Garden in New York where one of the people opening for Trump, a comic, had called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage.
There's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
Trump and his team have distanced Trump from the racist remarks of the comic, and as well as others who opened for Donald Trump that day. And basically, Biden had said that the only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. And then later, the White House, Biden walked back that comment and said that Biden meant the allies of Trump and not the voters of Trump. Kamala Harris has, of course, brushed past this. She did not ace it, and she's also trying to reach out to Republicans and Trump voters. However, Trump told his supporters in Green Bay that Kamala Harris and Biden had called them garbage, and that was far worse than deplorables, the word Hillary Clinton had used in the 2016 campaign to describe Trump supporters. Of course, Kamala Harris had not said this. She did not call Trump supporters garbage, and Biden has clarified his comments. So Trump also said that he's going to protect women, whether they like it or not. And he said he was making that comment against the advice of his advisors. As you know, there have been concerns about Trump's attitudes and behaviors towards women, and also policies regarding women's rights, specifically reproductive rights. And I guess his advisors were concerned that making a statement like that would be detrimental in terms of winning the support of women who are already showing a preference for Kamala Harris. And we saw this last week. Men are showing a preference for Donald Trump. In the weekend before the vote, both candidates are campaigning across 3 blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Biden won the states in 2020, but Trump won them in 2016. Arab American communities, especially in Michigan, are not happy with the Democratic Party's position on the Israel-Gaza conflict. Kamala Harris has been reaching out to this group. Both candidates are also reaching out to union workers, steel workers, auto workers across the states. Trump will be campaigning on Monday in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Kamala Harris in East Lansing, Michigan on Sunday. Kamala Harris will be in Pennsylvania on Monday. New survey results are out on the political attitudes of Indian Americans. There are about 5.2 million Indian Americans in the United States, and they are a wealthy group, and they're not the only group that could be the margin of difference in battleground states. For example, you have the parties are quoting Jewish Americans in Pennsylvania who could be the margin of difference. But Indian Americans could also be the margin of difference. And like in 2020, in 2024 as well, groups have been quoting them, and particularly the Democrats. So earlier this week, there was a report on their political attitudes based on the Indian American Attitudes Survey 2024. The last time this survey was conducted was in 2020. The report was published by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and it was authored by Sumitra Badrinathan, Devesh Kapoor, and Milan Vaishnav. So basically, what are the main findings of this report? Well, the main finding was that Indian Americans are still attached to the Democratic Party, but that attachment has waned over the last 4 years from 56% in 2020 to 47% in 2024. The number of Republican supporters in the respondents has stayed the same. However, the number of independents has increased. And among the independents, those who lean Republican has increased by the same amount that the number of Democrats has decreased. A second finding has been that the support for Harris is led by women. The support for Trump is led by men among Indian Americans. And this matches the larger population's patterns as well. Third, Indian Americans who are Republican candidates, politicians, have not been received too favorably by Indian American voters as a whole, and Indian American voters are lukewarm towards them. I'm referring to Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, both of them former presidential hopefuls on the Republican side, and Usha Vance, who is married to J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's running mate. But the relative lower levels of attachment to the Republican Party are not because Indian Americans are lukewarm towards Republican Indian American candidates. It's rather because Republican values are not in alignment with, in general, with the values of the Indian American community. Of course, we're talking about, by and large, there are many Indian Americans for whom the Republicans are aligned values-wise. So basically, in general, the lower preference for Republicans is due to their intolerance of minorities. That was one of the reasons given. That's in quotations. The attitudes and the policies towards abortion rights, and also a closeness of the Republican Party to Christian evangelists. That's the third reason. Another interesting finding of the Indian American Attitude Survey was that Harris's Indian American identity and Nikki Haley, who was at one point contesting with Donald Trump for the Republican ticket, her Indian heritage, are actually not big factors in Indian Americans liking these candidates when they do. People seem to like Harris because she is progressive amongst those who support her, and amongst those who would have preferred Nikki Haley to be the Republican candidate rather than Donald Trump. They liked her because of policy. They viewed her policies as being less extreme than Donald Trump's. Finally, a similar small proportion of Indian Americans are focused on India-US relations in terms of their priorities. And India-US relations seem to be, although still at relatively low levels, seem to be more important for Republican Indian Americans. This survey was conducted over September and October. It was conducted in partnership with YouGov Online and had a margin of error of 3.7%. A Pennsylvania state judge has blocked a case brought by the Philadelphia district attorney challenging ex-owner and SpaceX founder Elon Musk's policy of giving at random $1 million to voters registering in battleground states. The judge said that since there's another case on this matter playing out in federal court, let that play out. Regardless, when the decisions in these cases are handed down, it's probably going to be after November 5th. Meanwhile, Trump has sounded the alarm on potential cases of voter fraud. He's actually said there is voter fraud in Pennsylvania, in York and Lancaster counties. In both these counties, there are investigations that are going on over voter registration forms. These investigations have not been completed. It appears that Trump is laying the ground. He's kept open the possibility that he will be challenging the results of the election. We'll have to wait for November 6th, 7th, 8th, and beyond to see how this plays out. Finally, there's a Gallup poll which says that projects 54% of Americans will cast their vote or plan to cast their vote before November 5th. This compares to 64% in 2020. Both these numbers are much higher than anything that happened before the pandemic. That's it from us for now. Thanks for tuning in and see you next time.